proud of y'all. Oh my gosh, does somebody know about Zettelkasten?
Yes.
How many people know about Zettelkasten? Oh, you guys are brilliant. Okay, for those of you that don't, I'd like to evangelize. I'm going to tell you about Zettelkasten, which I found last year, and it is a way to create a second brain and publish the things that you're excited about. So we all have a problem. We read a lot, we watch a lot, we listen to a lot, and there are things that people say, like the Jurassic Park syndrome, that are interesting and light bulbs in our brains. But how do we keep track of those things in a useful way? Why do they matter? How do I write blog posts? How do I publish these things? And how do I sound, smart sometimes? Because sometimes you're like, oh, what's that thing that I thought was really cool? And you're like, oh, yes, let me pull out my Zettelkasten, and you'll look really cool. Not for pulling out the Zettelkasten, but, So a possible solution to this that I posit is Zettelkasten, Gesundheit. And I'd like to show you, for those of you that are pretty bored with this already, what is an actual example, and I'll show you my 2023 Blue Ridge Ruby. So this is my Zettelkasten graph view from the last year. You can see all the tabs up at the top, maybe, of all the sort of things that I'm thinking about right now: tech debt, code churn, business logic. But yeah, this is from last year, and let's zoom in specifically at the top to Annie Kylie, I don't remember how to say her last name, her talk. And this is that talk. These are the notes that I took, and these are the links to the right of the different things that I've quoted back to it. So I read Atomic Habits and Deep Work. Goals versus systems is a big part of his philosophy, and I was thinking a lot about that when she gave her talk. And then also I was like, here's a new coding project checklist. What are the systems that we need in place? I got a lot of really great stuff from her talk last year, thanks to Annie. And yeah, that's an example of a small note. So it's an atomic, tiny note. It's not a big, long journal entry where you're spitting out all of your thoughts. It's really tiny pieces. And for those of you that have seen me sitting in this conference on my phone the entire time that you're doing your talk, I'm not ignoring you. I am literally writing a ton of notes, individual atomic notes. So I'm not a jerk. Yeah, so why should you listen to me? I've literally done them all. I've done Evernote, Dropbox Paper, Notion, Roam. I've done bullet journals, all of this stuff. And I really like Zettelkasten. I use Obsidian because you can keep a copy of your Markdown files. Okay, here's how it works. So Zettelkasten is German for slipbox. And it was, I've done more research, and I don't think he was created by Luhmann, but he's one of the first people. Prolific career, 70 books, 400 articles. So he outputted a lot. And the way that he did it was through his method with Zettelkasten. And a Zettel is a note, and he would write a unit of an idea or a piece of, or a quote from a book, and he would give it an ID. And he would match those ideas to other subsequent notes that he would take. So this is all very manual, and he'd put them in a box, a kasten, into categories. So there are different types of Zettels, different kastens. There are fleeting notes, things you're just sort of are thinking about, shower thoughts, if you will. Literature, so different quotes. And permanent notes, which are sort of a combination of all of these different things. I have some bonus ones in my Zettelkasten. I use hubs to sort of enter my Zettelkasten, like Blue Ridge Ruby. There's a hub just for that. There's also a hub for meetings with people that I meet with a lot and want to remember the things that we're talking about. And then I also have one for Ruby gems. So why is this useful? In the old workflow, in terms of what you want to write about, you think, what should I write about? Here's a list of 15 different topics that maybe I could say something about. You pick something from the top of that list, something that you like, and then you do a bunch of reading and note-taking. You look at all the stuff that you've read over the past year, and then you slowly put together your talk or whatever it may be. Some time passes, and then you might publish that thing. The new workflow gets rid of those three things completely, and it goes straight from your notes to the content. So you just read the things that you care about, or you write down the things that somebody said that you thought were really cool, and you just write your small atomic notes, and then you mine your Zettelkasten for topics. So it's a bottom up instead of top down, and then you produce your content. So you can see the one on the left, you have an idea, and then all of the work is on the bottom, and then you follow up with research to build your corpus, kind of like a traditional PhD. You're like, oh, here's my topic, and here's my giant reading list I have to get through. But in the opposite, we're saying, no, like, let's just read what we're interested in and get excited about those things and build it into our Zettelkasten. And then you go into your graph and you find and connect the things that are interesting to you. Because it's those connections that are the most important thing, not necessarily the ideas in and of themselves. Okay, moving on. I just want to give you one more example. So I've been reading Copeland's book, and this is just one little section from the beginning. And I never heard of fan in and fan out before, and I thought it was really interesting. And so I wrote a little note, and it's a literature note, so I have no opinions about what I think about it. It's just sort of an explanation in my own words of the section. But then I've got some backlinks to it in CodeChurn, and then also like referencing the book itself when I want to produce a bibliography, if I ever want to write about this stuff. And yeah, because we know in order to measure health, you count relationships among organisms. That was by Jeremy last year. And every intellectual endeavor starts with a note.